The sound of breaking glass slices through laughter and music. For one suspended heartbeat, every conversation in the grand ballroom stops. Crystal shards glitter across the marble floor like fallen stars beneath a chandelier, worth more than most people's homes. At the center of it all stands Clara Jennings, her expression sharp and polished as the diamonds on her wrist. And across from her, frozen in quiet composure, stands Maya Carter, the woman Clara has just humiliated. "Go clean something," Clara says. Her tone is sugar-coated poison. "That's what you're here for." But Maya doesn't flinch. She doesn't gasp. Instead, a quiet calculation flashes in her eyes like a storm gathering far beyond the horizon. The guests glance away, pretending not to notice. The orchestra continues softly, pretending nothing happened. But the air has changed. Everyone can feel it. This is the annual Langford Foundation Gala, a night where wealth is displayed like a crown jewel, and morality is optional. Tickets cost $10,000 apiece, each claiming to support education programs for underprivileged youth. And yet, the woman who actually built one of those programs, the one who turned research into real change, is standing barefoot among broken glass, mistaken once again for staff. Maya bends down, carefully collecting the shards. Her tailored navy suit glimmers under the golden light. She doesn't rush. She doesn't tremble. Each movement is deliberate, calm, and dangerous. 3 years of her life hang in the balance tonight. 3 years of research, of fighting bureaucracy and bias, of creating pilot schools in forgotten neighborhoods where textbooks are decades old. All of it rests on securing the Langford family's financial backing. Clara Jennings, however, is not just any guest. She's the daughter of the Langford dynasty, heiress to Langford Capital and the unofficial gatekeeper to an empire of influence. Her endorsement can open doors or close them forever, and right now she's trying to close Maya out. Maya straightens, holding a shard between her fingers, light catching its edge. She turns to a passing waiter and drops it gently into his tray. Then she looks at Clara, calm, unwavering. "You've made a mess," Maya says softly. "Not the first time, I suppose." Clara's smile twitches, faltering for just a second before reforming like a mask snapped back into place. "So helpful. You should stick to what you do best." Laughter bubbles faintly from nearby tables, nervous and forced. Then the music swells again, swallowing the moment whole. But for Maya, something inside shifts. The quiet patience that carried her through countless small indignities, the subtle dismissals, the condescending smiles, the polite racism hidden behind charity, begins to thin. Across the ballroom, Dr. Evelyn Ross, a board member with steel-gray hair and eyes that have seen too much, watches intently. She was the one who recruited Maya, insisting that the foundation needed someone who understood both the data and the children behind it. Evelyn leans close and whispers, "Remember why you're here, not despite where you came from. Because of it." Maya nods slightly, the words grounding her again. Her phone buzzes. A text from Daniel, her operations director. "You okay?" She doesn't answer. Not yet. Maya has faced worse than this. She's taught in schools where heaters didn't work and rats scurried through hallways. She's raised funds door to door when no one else believed in her vision. She's fought her way into rooms like this, filled with people who praise diversity while ignoring the voices that challenge their comfort. And tonight, she's about to make sure they listen. As the gala resumes, the whispers spread like wildfire. Some pity her. Others admire her restraint. But Maya's focus never wavers. The Langfords control access to a network of billionaires whose donations could expand her education initiative nationwide. Without their support, her program might die in silence. But if she plays this wrong, if she reacts emotionally, her entire life's work could vanish before dessert is served. Maya steadies her breath. Every movement now is deliberate. Every word a choice. The room glows with opulence. Chandeliers glittering, laughter echoing, cameras flashing. But behind every smile, power hides like a blade in silk. Clara drifts through the crowd again, whispering to other board members, pointing discreetly in Maya's direction. Her husband, Charles Langford, enters the room moments later, a man whose charm and political polish have shielded their family through 2 economic scandals. Unlike Clara, he masks his contempt well. "Dr. Carter," he says smoothly, shaking Maya's hand, "I've heard you've been doing wonderful work in our pilot districts." "Thank you, Mr. Langford," she replies evenly. "We've seen strong results, 43% higher college acceptance rates among our first cohort. Impressive, he says. Let's discuss it soon. But his tone is the kind that never means soon. As he moves away, Evelyn gives Maya a knowing glance. He smiles for headlines, not people. Maya nods again, her composure steady but her mind racing. She knows this game. Every move is strategy. Every word a step in an invisible war where reputation is currency and truth is negotiable. And right now, she's outnumbered but not outmatched because Maya Carter doesn't plan to just survive this night. She plans to remember it, to use it to turn humiliation into evidence. Rain drums softly against the office windows, blurring the skyline of the city. 3 days had passed since the gala, yet the sting of Clara's words still lingered like smoke in Maya's lungs. She sat before her computer, scrolling through the morning's email announcements. And then she froze. There it was. A press release from the Langford Foundation's communications team. Rebecca Langford appointed as chairperson of the Education Grant Committee. Her stomach twisted. That position, her position, was the one meant to review her proposal. The same woman who told her to go clean something would now decide the fate of a program that could transform thousands of lives. Daniel appeared at her office door, coffee mug clutched too tightly in his hand. You saw it? Maya nodded, eyes still fixed on the glowing screen. Her background is in art history. She's never worked in education policy. She doesn't even understand the data. Her background, Daniel said bitterly, is being a Langford. That's all it takes. Maya leaned back in her chair, the exhaustion heavy behind her eyes. She'll bury the proposal. Years of work gone. Daniel hesitated. Can Evelyn intervene? Maya shook her head slowly, not without losing her board seat. The Langfords just pledged $30 million to the Foundation's general fund. No one's going to challenge that kind of power. Outside, lightning flickered faintly through the clouds. The city below shimmered in the reflection of wet streets, beautiful and indifferent. Maya rubbed her temples, her mind racing. She had spent years gathering evidence-based results, documenting student progress, building a model that could close achievement gaps that policy papers only talked about. And now it was at the mercy of a woman who saw her as an accessory for a diversity brochure. But Maya wasn't just an educator. She was an analyst, a strategist, a survivor of systems that had underestimated her before. And this time she would not be erased quietly. The committee meeting came the following Tuesday, the room heavy with tension masked by polite smiles. Maya presented from the far end of a long oak table while Clara presided from the head, scrolling through her phone, tapping her manicured nails against the wood in mock boredom. Maya clicked through slides, her voice steady and clear. Our pilot districts reported a 43% increase in college admissions. Attendance rates improved by 28%. Teacher retention doubled. At that, Clara finally looked up, her tone syrupy. That's very nice, Maya, very inspirational. But real change requires understanding communities. Experience you wouldn't have learned at, where did you go again? Before Maya could answer, Evelyn interjected. Harvard, and Yale, and Stanford. The silence that followed was thick enough to feel. Clara waved it away with a casual smile. Well, academia has its place. But I chaired the Metropolitan Museum's diversity initiative last year. We can't ignore the importance of cultural experience. Daniel coughed softly, trying to hide a laugh. Our practical experience is documented in sections 4 through 6, Maya replied smoothly. You'll see community engagement metrics that define our approach. By the time the meeting ended, Clara had proposed adjustments to the program, reducing focus on underfunded schools, diverting 40% of the budget to a Langford Family Center, and appointing a Langford representative as co-director. When the elevator doors closed afterward, Daniel's calm broke. This is sabotage. She's gutting everything that matters. Maya stared at the descending numbers, her voice even. I'm considering all options. Options? You can't seriously let her rewrite your life's work. I'm not, Maya said quietly. I'm letting her think she's winning. The elevator opened to the lobby and Maya stepped out without looking back. Because the only thing more dangerous than power, she added, is someone who documents it. 2 weeks later, an email arrived, an invitation written with the kind of formal charm that hides a trap. Donor dinner at Langford Manor. Attendance mandatory for continued program consideration. Business attire. +1 optional. Maya forwarded it to Daniel with one line. Battle gear required. Langford Manor rose like a monument to excess, its marble staircase glowing under golden light, its gardens stretching into the distance like a scene from an empire that had never fallen. Maya and Daniel arrived exactly on time, greeted by staff who bowed without meeting their eyes. Dr. Carter, said Charles Langford, voice polished as ever. My wife speaks highly of your work. I'm sure she does. Maya replied with the kind of smile that hid its sharpness. Then Clara appeared, all grace and venom, slipping her arm through Maya's before she could react. Ah, there's our diversity hire, she purred. She has some charming ideas about urban education. Let me introduce you around. The words landed like blows disguised as compliments, but Maya only smiled. She'd learned long ago that silence can be sharper than rage. Dr. Carter, she corrected gently, turning to the nearest donor. My team's pilot studies have shown measurable results in underserved communities. I'd love to share them with you. Clara's eyes flickered with irritation. Throughout the evening, she made sure Maya sat far from the key guests, wedged between an elderly trustee who snored through the soup course and a socialite glued to her phone. When coffee was served, Maya noticed her cup was a chipped mug, the only one not matching the fine china. Daniel's eyebrows rose from across the table. Maya gave a faint shake of her head. Not yet, not tonight. As the dinner wound down, Maya observed everything. The alliances, the subtle shifts in power, the way Clara positioned herself between Maya and every donor who might have listened. She saw Charles watching his wife with growing discomfort. His expression flickered each time Clara spoke over Maya. It was a small fracture, but Maya noticed. Then came the voice she'd been waiting for. Your proposal has promise, said a man beside her. Andrew Whitman, a billionaire tech founder turned philanthropist. Particularly your focus on outcomes beyond standardized testing. Thank you, Maya replied. Our research shows those metrics often overlook real growth. We measure engagement, creativity, and confidence. I'd like to see your data, Whitman said, handing her his card. My foundation might align with your goals. Clara appeared instantly as if pulled by radar. Andrew, you must meet my husband's new investment director, she said, steering him away. He's revolutionizing our funding strategy. But before Whitman could be whisked off, he glanced back. Maya gave the smallest nod. A silent understanding passed between them. She'd memorized his email before Clara even touched his arm. As the night ended, the chandelier light reflected on her calm face. The humiliation, the slight, the manipulation, all of it was now data. Every insult recorded, every misstep archived. Because Maya Carter wasn't here to fight in the open. She was building a case. A quiet war had begun, and she had just taken her first step. The following weeks moved like a storm building on the horizon. Every morning Maya woke before sunrise, the city still wrapped in gray silence. She sat at her kitchen table surrounded by files, notes, and spreadsheets that told a story few wanted to see. Each number, each email, each adjustment from Clara revealed another crack in the Langford Foundation's polished image. The data didn't lie. It never did. The programs that began under the leadership of Black and Latino directors consistently lost funding within 2 years. The resources always found their way back to institutions connected to the Langford family, universities, galleries, private academies. A pattern, subtle, deliberate, undeniable. Maya's apartment became a command center, walls covered in sticky notes, printouts, timelines. She didn't just work on evidence. She lived inside it. She didn't tell Daniel everything at first, not yet. He'd want to protect her, and protection was a luxury she couldn't afford. She needed precision, not panic. But the signs of something larger kept surfacing. Emails accidentally copied to her inbox, financial summaries that didn't match the official reports, donors who asked questions that didn't line up with what they'd supposedly funded. And then came the final insult. A week before her next presentation, the foundation uploaded a new version of her proposal to the shared drive without her permission. Pages were altered. Numbers changed. The focus on underfunded schools watered down. The Langford Family Center now claimed nearly half the budget. Maya stared at the document, her pulse steady but her thoughts razor-sharp. They were rewriting her work in real time, turning it into a vanity project that looked noble on paper but did nothing in reality. When she confronted Clara before the next board meeting, the woman smiled sweetly. Your data needed some refinement. We simply made it more presentable by deleting half the impact metrics. Maya asked. Clara shrugged. Donors prefer concise results. You'd be amazed how little they actually read. Maya said nothing. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was storage. Another piece of evidence. Another moment she would use later. That afternoon, during the presentation, everything went wrong. Or rather, everything went wrong for them. The main screen malfunctioned as Maya began. Clara was quick to offer help. Don't worry, she said, her tone rich with false sympathy. I've brought a backup. Within minutes, she was distributing printed versions, her version, to every board member. Maya stood still, every muscle locked. She watched as the altered data spread like a lie across the room. Lines she'd written were twisted, her conclusions warped into hollow slogans. As you'll see, Clara began, addressing the board with flawless confidence, our proposed revisions align the initiative more closely with foundation priorities. Maya kept her expression neutral, even as Clara erased 3 years of work with a few elegant sentences. But under the table, her tablet was already recording. Every voice, every misrepresentation, every timestamp cross-referenced with the original files. This wasn't humiliation anymore. This was theft, and Maya knew exactly how to handle thieves who hid behind charity. When the meeting ended, Evelyn found her in the hallway. You didn't say a word, she whispered. Maya looked at her calmly. Not yet. That night rain beat against her windows like a relentless metronome. She stood in the middle of her apartment, surrounded by printouts and screenshots. Each page told part of a larger truth, a foundation that had built its reputation on exploiting the very people it claimed to uplift. The same playbook, over and over. Hire someone brilliant from a marginalized community, praise their ideas, take their work, strip it down, redirect the money, rebrand the success. She traced the timeline with her fingertip. 7 programs, 6 directors, all replaced, all erased. When Evelyn called again that night, Maya finally answered. They're not just rewriting proposals, Maya said quietly. They're rewriting history. Evelyn hesitated. Maya, you're playing with fire. The Langfords control half the donors in this city. They don't control the truth. But the truth doesn't always protect people. Maya looked at the old photograph on her desk, her first class of students. Kids who had believed in possibility, even when the world didn't believe in them. She thought of their faces, their questions, their dreams. They deserve better, she whispered. And I'm done being quiet. She began cataloging everything. Emails, committee notes, financial transfers. Every document backed up in encrypted folders labeled by date. This wasn't revenge. It was evidence. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind, words she'd heard 100 times growing up. Always keep records, baby. Paper doesn't lie, by dawn. Maya had mapped the entire web, the false donations, the diverted grants, the connections between Langford-controlled organizations and independent community programs that existed only on paper. Each line led to the same source. The same family. When she leaned back in her chair, exhaustion pulsed behind her eyes, but so did clarity. The next step wasn't rage. It was strategy, because she finally understood something that had taken years to see clearly. They didn't fear exposure. They feared precision, and Maya Carter had spent her entire life learning how to be precise. The next morning, she made a call she'd been avoiding. Mr. Whitman, she said when the line connected, I have information that will interest you, but it can't be shared through email. Understood, he replied. Come by my office tomorrow. Bring whatever you have. For the first time in weeks, Maya allowed herself to smile, not with triumph, but with certainty. She had always fought for her students. Now she was fighting for the truth itself, and the Langfords had no idea the teacher they'd tried to silence had just become their reckoning. Morning sunlight spilled across the glass towers downtown as Maya walked into Andrew Whitman's office. The air smelled faintly of coffee and paper, a place where deals were made quietly but reshaped entire systems. He rose to greet her, tall and calm, a man who built empires by understanding the mechanics of influence. You look tired, he said, studying her face. Focused, she corrected. Maya placed a small drive on the table between them. Everything I've found is on there. 3 years of financial records, internal communications, and board decisions. It's not about one bad person, it's about a structure that rewards exploitation. Whitman didn't touch the drive right away. You're aware what this means, right? Once this gets out, there's no going back. I'm aware, Maya said. But I can't keep teaching ethics to children if I let hypocrisy win in real life. He nodded slowly, respect replacing hesitation. Then we'll do this the right way. Quietly first, publicly only when every fact is irrefutable. For weeks they met in silence, building what Maya started calling the pattern. It wasn't just about missing money or corrupted reports, it was about a formula. Foundations like Langford's followed the same blueprint. Promise progress, absorb ideas from community innovators, then redirect funds to institutions that kept power in the same hands. Each night Maya added more layers to the story. She compared financial data with board minutes, traced donations to shell nonprofits, highlighted how grants were split into administrative costs that conveniently matched the Langfords' personal accounts. Daniel joined the effort once he saw the evidence. You were right, he said one night, looking at the wall of charts. This isn't mismanagement. It's design. Maya's reply was quiet but certain. They've built a system that looks generous and feeds on generosity. Whitman moved carefully, using his network to verify data, contacting journalists he trusted but never revealing Maya's name. The plan took shape like a slow-building storm. Then came the invitation. The National Education Philanthropy Conference 3 weeks away. The Langfords were scheduled to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award for their commitment to educational equity. Clara would be giving the keynote address. The irony was too perfect. This is where it happens, Maya said, studying the event schedule. They want applause. They'll get accountability. Whitman frowned. You're planning to confront them publicly. Not confront, she said, reveal. Every chart, every transfer, every false claim, and there will be witnesses who can't be bought. He leaned forward. You realize this will make you a target. It already has, she said. But at least this way the truth has an audience. The following nights blurred into a rhythm of preparation. Maya built the presentation herself. No dramatics, no speculation. Only facts. Clean lines. Clear evidence. She cross-checked every citation until there was nothing left that could be challenged. She didn't sleep much. But she didn't feel tired either. There was something electrifying about clarity. The night before the conference, she stood in her apartment surrounded by the bound reports, 50 copies ready to distribute to journalists, educators, and donors. On her desk sat an old photograph of her grandmother, the woman who had spent decades cleaning houses for people who never learned her name. Maya touched the frame gently. You kept records, she whispered. Now I know why. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Paper doesn't lie. People do. At dawn, Maya ironed her charcoal suit, its lines sharp and deliberate. She didn't wear it to impress them. She wore it to remind herself that she belonged in every room she entered. The convention center hummed with artificial light and chatter. Logos from universities and corporations gleamed across banners. In the main hall, the stage glittered under spotlights. A crystal trophy stood on a velvet pedestal, waiting to honor the very people who had turned philanthropy into theater. Maya moved through the crowd unnoticed. Her badge read, Program Partner. The irony nearly made her laugh. She found her allies scattered throughout the hall. Whitman near the press section, Evelyn among the foundation delegates, Daniel stationed by the sound technician with backup copies of her slides. Everything was in place. When the ceremony began, the audience clapped politely as the chairman praised the Langfords' visionary generosity. Every word struck Maya as more grotesque than the last. Finally, the chairman smiled toward the audience. And now please welcome Dr. Maya Carter, Executive Director and Partner in the Langford Education Initiative. Clara's smile faltered for the first time. Maya walked to the podium. Her voice carried clearly through the microphone, calm and steady. Thank you. The Langford Foundation's influence on educational philanthropy is indeed remarkable, worthy of examination. One tap on her tablet, and the screens behind her came alive with a title slide, Following the Money Promise versus Practice in Modern Philanthropy. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Maya's voice didn't waver. Philanthropy relies on trust. Donors trust that their contributions are used ethically. Communities trust that resources reach them. Students trust that programs built for them actually serve their needs. But what happens when that trust is systematically violated? Clara shifted in her seat, her face tightening. For 3 years, Maya continued, I tracked where the Langford Foundation's money truly went. What I found wasn't inefficiency. It was intention. She tapped again. Charts appeared. Lines of funding curving away from impoverished districts and toward elite institutions. Figures showing how the Langfords received tax credits hundreds of % higher than the value of their actual community impact. Gasps moved through the hall. Journalists began typing furiously. This data is not speculation, Maya said. It's sourced from public filings, internal communications, and official grant records. Clara stood abruptly. This is a disgrace, she snapped, her smile frozen in place. You're misrepresenting our work. Maya met her gaze, calm as glass. I'm not here to clean up your image, Clara. I'm here to clean the record. The words hit like thunder. The crowd stirred, whispering, leaning forward. Behind Clara, the screens shifted again. Emails, financial ledgers, testimonials from community partners whose promised funds had never arrived. Voices of educators describing canceled programs, empty classrooms, broken promises. Clara tried to grab the microphone, but the moderator held up a hand. Let her finish, and Maya did. Methodically, clearly, relentlessly. Each slide stripped away another layer of the Langfords' false benevolence until the truth stood naked under the lights. She ended with a single statement. True charity doesn't need applause. It needs accountability. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to stop. Then, slowly, people began to clap. It started in the back row. Whitman. Then Evelyn. Then others, rising one by one until the room thundered with applause that wasn't polite but defiant. Clara's face went pale. Charles Langford stood behind her, unreadable, his gaze fixed on the screen. When he finally spoke, his voice carried across the hall. I would like to thank Dr. Carter for her courage. It appears our foundation has failed the people it claimed to serve. That ends now. Clara turned to him in disbelief, but the cameras had already found them both. By nightfall, the world would know. By the next morning, the city was awake to the sound of headlines. Maya's name was everywhere. News anchors repeated fragments of her speech. The words philanthropy scandal flashed across every major outlet. Social media overflowed with clips of her standing firm under the bright stage lights, exposing everything that had been hidden for years. The Langford Foundation's website went offline before noon. Journalists crowded its gates. Statements were being drafted in panic. What had been a perfect empire of control was unraveling thread by thread. In her apartment, Maya sat at the kitchen table, still wearing the same suit from the day before. Her tea had gone cold hours ago, untouched. The exhaustion she'd kept at bay for weeks was finally catching up, pressing into her bones. Daniel arrived with a brown paper bag of food neither of them could eat. You're everywhere, he said quietly. Every channel. Every feed. You broke their spell. Maya didn't answer right away. I didn't want fame. I wanted truth. He gave a faint smile. You got both. Her phone vibrated again. Another notification. Then another. Journalists requesting interviews. Former employees sending thanks. Teachers writing to say her report was being discussed in classrooms. Then a call appeared on the screen. One she hadn't expected. Grandma Elaine, Maya answered instantly. Hi, Grandma. The old woman's voice trembled, filled with pride. I saw you, baby. I saw you on TV. You spoke truth without shouting. That's rare. You reminded them that power doesn't mean wisdom. Maya's eyes filled. The dam of restraint cracking at last. You told me once that paper doesn't lie. And you proved it, Elaine said. You took everything they used to keep us quiet and turned it into a weapon for good. When the call ended, Maya sat still for a long time. The city buzzed outside, cars moving like veins of light through the wet streets. Inside, she finally let herself cry. Not out of sadness, but release. For the first time in years, she wasn't carrying the truth alone. 3 days later, the Langford Foundation released a formal statement signed by Charles himself. After a thorough internal review, the message said, they were acknowledging serious failures in transparency and implementation. Clara Jennings Langford had resigned from all board positions. Independent oversight committees would now include community representatives. Every redirected fund would be audited and repaid to the programs it was stolen from. The statement ended with a single sentence. Accountability begins today. When Maya returned to the foundation for the first time since the scandal, the air felt different. The walls seemed less proud, less polished. People she barely knew stopped to thank her in hushed voices. Evelyn met her at the door, eyes bright with something that looked like peace. "You did it," she said softly. "You changed the current." Inside the boardroom, the long table that once symbolized control was gone. The chairs were arranged in a circle now. Charles stood waiting, not as a man of power, but as one trying to understand the wreckage left behind. "Dr. Carter," he began, his voice sincere, "I owe you more than an apology. You exposed something I should have seen. Ignorance isn't innocence," Maya nodded. "Change isn't about guilt. It's about what you do next." He looked around the room at the new faces, teachers, activists, local leaders. "Then what comes next is rebuilding, together." The board voted unanimously to fund Maya's original education initiative in full. Not just fund it, but expand it nationwide, keeping her data-driven accountability system intact. For the first time, Maya wasn't fighting to be heard. She was being asked to lead. Weeks turned into months. The foundation transformed from a symbol of privilege into a working model of reform. Each program now required proof that resources reached the communities they were meant for. Each decision had to be reviewed by educators, not just investors, and something unexpected began happening across the country. Other organizations followed. Reports were opened. Grants were audited. The illusion of benevolence started to fracture under the light of Maya's framework. 6 months later, she stood on a small stage in a crowded community center, surrounded by teachers, parents, and students. No chandeliers, no gowns. Just people who had fought too long to be seen. Maya's presentation was simple. The first quarter results of the reformed program. College acceptance rates up 27%. Teacher retention up 32%. Student confidence up 58%. Applause filled the room. Not polite applause, but something real and raw. A teacher stood up, tears in her eyes. "For the first time, our kids have textbooks that aren't older than they are." "Thank you." A student raised his hand. "Dr. Carter, are you going to make programs like this in other cities too?" Maya smiled. "That's the plan. But the real goal is to make sure no one ever takes credit for your work again." In the back of the room, Charles Langford sat quietly among the crowd. He didn't speak. He just listened. When the event ended, Maya stepped outside into the evening air. The sky was streaked with gold and gray, the kind of light that feels like both an ending and a beginning. Her phone buzzed with a message from Whitman. 3 other major foundations just announced internal reviews. "Your methodology is spreading." She looked out over the city, the wind tugging at her hair. For years she had been careful, measured, strategic. But tonight she allowed herself to feel something unfamiliar. Peace. The system she'd fought was bigger than one family. It was an entire structure built on silence. But silence no longer had the last word. The truth had. And as she walked down the street, her steps light against the pavement, she knew this wasn't just her victory. It was proof that change, real change, begins the moment someone decides they won't look away anymore. Because power doesn't crumble when confronted by anger. It crumbles when faced with evidence and courage to show it, and Maya Carter had both. The following months felt like a wave that refused to rest. Everywhere Maya went, people recognized her face. She became a symbol of quiet rebellion. The woman who had dismantled an empire with facts instead of fury. But symbols carry weight. And that weight followed her everywhere. Her program flourished faster than anyone expected. Classrooms once ignored were now buzzing with teachers who finally had resources that matched their passion. Children were learning in buildings that no longer leaked when it rained. But with success came scrutiny. Calls from media outlets, invitations to panels, offers wrapped in compliments that all wanted a piece of her story. Maya learned to say no. Her mission was never about becoming the headline. It was about making sure no child's potential was buried under someone else's pride. One evening, she received a quiet message from an anonymous address. "There are others like you. Other foundations. Other patterns. They need your blueprint." Attached were files from whistleblowers across the country. Similar tactics, different names. Money disguised as charity. generosity masking control. The system was larger than she'd thought, and the more she read, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about one corrupt family. It was a machine that fed itself through every institution that called itself good. Maya leaned back in her chair and whispered to herself, "Then we'll break the machine." Within weeks, she began assembling something new, an alliance of educators, financial analysts, and activists determined to expose systemic deceit across philanthropy. They called it the Open Ledger Project. Its purpose was simple: transparency for every dollar that claimed to serve the public. When news of the project reached the media, it ignited a firestorm. Foundations that had operated in shadows now faced questions they could no longer ignore. Lawmakers began citing her research. Universities adopted her auditing framework. Accountability had become fashionable, but not everyone was celebrating. Behind the scenes, she received veiled threats. Anonymous donors withdrew offers. Old allies warned her to slow down. The more she revealed, the more powerful enemies stirred. One night, her grandmother called again. "You're pushing a boulder up a mountain, baby. But don't forget, you're not alone this time." "I know," Maya said softly, "and I won't stop." The next day, she stood before another crowd, this time in Washington, where the first national hearing on philanthropic transparency was being broadcast live. Rows of officials, journalists, and educators filled the hall. Cameras pointed toward her, waiting. Maya spoke calmly. "Charity without accountability isn't kindness, it's control. We've created a culture where wealth writes morality, and silence keeps the money flowing. It's time that ended." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Truth has its own gravity. She showed the data, the diversion of funds, the manipulated reports, the endless cycle of promises that never reached the people who needed them. The hall was silent by the time she finished. When she stepped outside afterward, rain had started to fall, soft and cleansing. Daniel joined her under the awning, grinning. "They can't bury this now." "They won't have to," she replied. "We've already planted it." The rain grew heavier, washing the steps, the air thick with that smell of renewal that always follows a storm. A week later, she returned to one of the first schools her program had funded. Children ran across the yard, their laughter echoing against the old brick walls that had been freshly painted. A teacher waved from the doorway, her face lit with gratitude. Maya walked inside quietly, watching the students read, build, question, dream. Each voice was a promise fulfilled, each page a future she refused to let be stolen. In that moment, she understood that justice didn't end with exposure. It began with rebuilding. The Langfords had vanished from public life, but their fall had sparked something irreversible, a movement of accountability spreading across the nation. Maya didn't need applause. She needed proof, and it was right there, alive in front of her, in the faces of the children who no longer had to wonder if the world would ever care. As she stood in that classroom, the sounds of laughter and learning filling the air, she realized the truth of it all. Power had never been the enemy. Silence had, and silence was no longer winning.